200 for like fans, fighters, athletes. So as far as economic impact, I think it's I definitely think it would be good for the city, and we put on a great event.
When is the event and where will it be held? What do we know?
It's at a demographic there, Coliseum, yeah.
Oh, okay, okay.
And the CVB is donating $10,000 to this as well.
Okay.
This is their first time here.
Mhm. Yes, and then, correct me if I'm wrong, but I know they've been in the Beaumont and Lake Charles area, and they're trying to branch out. And since we're centrally located too, I think this will be great for North Louisiana, some people come down Leedsville. I just, I think this might be a niche for us.
Behind Town Ford, it's November 16th on their comment.
Okay, thank you.
It tracks anywhere like championship wrestling used to do, that would do well.
All right, any further questions? Mr. West?
Say it again.
Our Lake Charles in August. We have fought in Beaumont many times, like she said, and then our first event in Lake Charles and our first event in Louisiana is in Lake Charles August 3rd. So it's coming up.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Yeah,
Hang on until the regular meeting because it's not, we can't take any action right now.
I don't think he needs to hang on if he doesn't want to for the regular. I think we'll be okay. But that's up to him. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
you
fine.
don't have to, but you know, most people like to know.
Oh, okay. All right, we don't have a quorum, so we can't take a vote, but it's only a committee, so the only recommendation. There is also an item to discuss GAEDA's funding process to include grant requests, intergovernmental agreements, cooperative agreements.
We've been working, Mr. Cowles has looked into, the grant, application, the revision of it, and I emailed that to you all so we can try to bring that together. And the idea is that instead of using the grant application as a screening device for all requests, it's confusing because a lot of it's not applicable to organizations like the City of Alexandria, the CBB, you know, so we want to move away from that and put on the website a tab that says funding mechanisms. So if somebody wants to do an intergovernmental agreement, it'll give them a roadmap to how to fill out that to submit a proposal to us. Cooperative endeavor agreements, the same thing. The grants, we want to move, I think several of you said that we want to, you know, put caps, different things like that. So I really need suggestions from you guys or to see if that application, the policies and procedures are where you want it and what you would like to see. Because right now it's been chopped up so much through the years that it doesn't even make sense anymore. So, and it originally, the grant funding was designed to have events become self-sustaining. So their first year, they got a certain amount of money and then but over the years, it's changed so much. So the original document is not making sense. And from what I hear from you all, you want to kind of put a cap on just, you know, events that are just coming and not performing and stuff like that. But we can't hold them accountable if we don't change the policies. So, you know, we really need to get that done before we go into 2025.
Yeah, I think it's a priority. I met with Miss Angie about this, you know, basically coming up as a group, you know, it's the board has got that capability to come up with a way to kind of tighten up that I think everybody can be happy with. I over the weekend revised that form that she sent. And, you know, you and I met, I'd love to meet it again at the end of the week and just kind of tighten it up, make sure it looks more like something, and just get it out there to see what everybody thinks about it. It's just basically puts caps on first year, second year, third year, you know, for the whole idea that, like Ms. Bernard was saying, it gets people to the point where we can get them sustainable. That's the first topic. And then the second thing, I would love for you to say just a few minutes sort of about the history of the cooperative endeavor process, I really want to, I'm kind of interested in this relationship we've had with the city. And if you can basically, since it sounds like to me, the cooperative endeavors, there was something in place. If you want to talk about it, Mr. Bernardo, and then how the IG really fits in with what we're trying to maybe do with them.
Well, originally, before the grant policies were adopted, because we were trying to figure out a way to give money to entities. And I think it was called undesignated grants, John?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we were trying to figure out a way that we could help. And they hired a grant writer, and he developed those under what the original board wanted. Over the years, and cooperative endeavor agreements, it was like, you do the grant, and then we just started doing everything under cooperative endeavor agreements. But it got confusing. And, you know, it got to the point where everything was a cooperative endeavor agreement, and people were confused of what the original grant policy was supposed to be about.
So remember they were using one cooperative endeavor as a blanket across all of it?
Right. And, you know, we need to move away from that because again, it confuses the public, it confuses the board, and it gets us away from the original, purpose of the grant. It was not supposed to be, like peak fighting. That really could have been a cooperative endeavor agreement, you know, instead of a grant. Because we were working with the CBB to bring them here. It doesn't, FFA, that 4-year contract, that could have been, instead of them filling out the grant application, could have been a cooperative endeavor agreement with the CBB, which you'll see that in here today. I don't know if that answers.
Well, it's a,
I was gonna say too, some of the things that have evolved is, back years ago, if somebody came in, like if Big Fighting came in, and we awarded them a grant, we wrote them a check for $10,000. Well, over the years, we've changed that and tightened that up so that now we're paying bills. And the intergovernmental agreement with the city, was voided last year, I think.
I think
So we don't have an intergovernmental agreement with the city any longer. And so, you know, trying to figure out how, when they come to this board asking for money, it doesn't really fit under the grant process that we have currently. So that's kind of, you know, where that, I think there's a lot of confusion about all of that and how they should request money from us and how that looks, you know, the CBB, because they're not, you know, peak fightings and the other events that go on are really more grants. These are either cooperative endeavors or, you know, government agreements.
Well, to clarify also that we don't have that memorandum of understanding with the city to where, because it got to the point where they were just submitting a letter asking for $175,000 with any supporting information. That does not mean we still can't do business with the city. They can submit a proposal and ask and bring it to the board. It just means that they can't come to us and just submit a letter and say, I want to withdraw this money. You know, it should be more streamlined.
Sure. So the IGA is where the city would fall under. I went to 2 of those meetings that the mayor had. And one of the meetings I watched online where, you know, he's saying GAEDA can help with this, GAEDA can help with that. So I was like, okay, good. Let's see where we can go with this. But so it seems like that IGA is really that process. It's not.
Right, the River Fact, take for instance, when they were getting ready to do that, the community service director emailed a memo. And I brought it before the board, and again, there was no supporting documentation, so we asked them, that sample list that I sent you guys with IGA, sent it to them and said, you know, fill this out. They sent me back an IGA. So that's for our legal counsel to do and bring it to the board to see, you know, what they want to do. So again, the process is there. It's just them wanting to fill out the information, and we hadn't gotten that cooperation.
Well, who links first at that? I mean, does this board link first at that and say, hey, we're happy, we could help with this, or does the city link first?
Well, they come to us like they have, but they need to submit information.
Okay.
It's,
So really, what you're saying is since it's them, they need to come to us.
they need to come to us or we can go to them with, you know, it's
Yeah, it can be either way. I mean, either way.
the information is there for this board to look at and review.
This is how I view it, and maybe it's not. There's like three buckets of money. You have grants, cooperative endeavors, and then like the city bucket, government.
Right.
The grants, in my mind, are like yearly amounts we give to certain local nonprofits, whoever we give to. I don't give money to the city. Or they don't. Yeah.
Those types.
Well, not the events, it's to the local nonprofits, like, do we give, yeah, to the museum, right? And in my mind, if we're gonna give the money, that's a grant. And I would think we just vote, we're gonna give the museum X dollars, and then we write them a check for X dollars. Or do they submit invoices?
With the quality of life, we do cooperative endeavor agreements that, spell out, when we're gonna give those installments to, you know, for.
Oh, okay, yeah, but, okay, so that's my mind, the grant, we're just giving money to local artists.
The way we've gone in the past have been, those have been cooperative endeavors, peak fightings and those type of events or grants.
See, to me, in my mind, it should be the exact opposite. But I don't really care what it's called, as long as we have a written document outlining how the money's gonna be spent.
Absolutely. It's more in-house, for us and to explain to the public what they're doing instead of using a document that doesn't apply to them.
Well, yeah, we're just gonna have to look, at that, but we really need to define what are grants and what are cooperative endeavors. Like, Wes's thing, in my mind, should be a cooperative endeavor, but if it's a grant, as long as we have a written document supporting it, I don't mind what it's called. And then in terms of that general IGA we had with the city, I think that was put in years ago by the mayor to streamline the process a little bit, and apparently it hasn't worked the way it was supposed to. So it was, I guess, rescinded, which to me doesn't make any difference. It's, the city can come and ask GAEDA for help whenever they want.
Right.
And then we'll either need, I guess we need to define what a cooperative endeavor is.
Well, those
So-
three documents that I sent, you all, and I'll send them out again, intergovernmental agreement, the grant, and the cooperative endeavor agreement. And we plan, like I said, plan to load them up on the website, so it'll be tabbed something like funding mechanisms, and if people can go on there and download the stuff same way they use the application.
But what I would like to see, if somebody wants money from GAEDA, like for peak fighting, 1 month, whoever is requesting the money personally shows up, explains the project, how it's going to benefit the city of Alexandria, and take questions from the commissioners.
And they can do that.
Okay, yeah, all right, yeah, okay. And then if the commission agrees, yeah, we want to participate in this project, then the next month, legal counsel brings the actual contract, whether it's a grant or cooperative endeavor, that we vote on to actually give them the money at that meeting. So there's really 2 bites, I guess, at the apple, but, I mean, that's how I would like it, and I prefer I don't know how often it happens, we get last minute emergency requests, like we gotta have it next month type thing.
I think, did we put
Well,
the 90 days?
we put this, was it 60 or 90? I think it was 90
I think
days.
it's 90.
Okay, yeah, whatever, yeah, but this,
We did do that.
yeah, this,
Those last minute things are, they.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
You can't, in 30 days or 2 weeks, you can't possibly vet those applications. So I think we did that last year, a 90-day.
okay, good.
Because that gives us plenty of time, like you said, for them to come before us, then you can look over everything, we can prepare and discuss, and then
That gives us, we're not rushed for time and making hasty decisions.
And then after the event, did we vote some money with CBB to where you can track how many people?
place.
That's the place.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, but then that needs to be reported back to the board here. Hey, they promised 800 people and we only got 200 people. Or they promised 800 people and we got 1,000 people. So we know that the money was appropriately spent. I mean, it's already spent, we can't take it back, but then next year will be a
I
little
think
closer.
currently we do that when they come back the next year to ask for money, that's when you're providing those places.
Well, I've been providing them after, you can do it, uh, 72 hours after.
Okay,
Yeah. So.
Oh, is it that quick?
Pulling them, and I've
You
been
can post it.
uploading them,
Yeah, you
yeah.
posted some of those.
Been uploading, we went over a couple of them that show that they didn't quite make their,
But really, I think the next meeting, you as an executive director ought to bring it up and say, look, last month we held XYZ event and we were extremely pleased because Placer said that we got the numbers they promised, or we were very disappointed because we didn't get the numbers they promised.
Well, maybe, Miss Angie, I can work with you on this. Maybe we can get something in front of the board, that form that you and I were working on, actually outlines that so you guys can look at it, make sure you like it. I like to follow the park, to be honest with you. But Placer, if you haven't had a chance to look at that Placer stuff, it's supposed to, it'll tell us, that beauticians group that came wasn't even remotely close to the numbers that we thought they were gonna be. Not even close. It's amazing what people you don't know about you.
Right.
I'm looking at you. I know. So, I don't know, that's just my view on it. I'm happy to work with you on that. Let's work on it together.
Oh,
so,
yeah, let's get a form that says what a grant, or something that defines a grant versus a cooperative endeavor, so we know what budget it goes.
Yeah.
that's what I sent out, I'll send it out again. Also, so to clarify, are you saying that you want to do like that introduction meeting, or are you saying it's not necessary?
No, I won't.
Yeah, I think that introduction.
Yeah,
is definitely-
whoever's coming, if somebody's coming and asking for any amount of money, they need to show up at a meeting to explain the event and to take questions from the commissioners.
So we need to put that in there, instead of the consultation meeting, which they're supposed to have with me before they submit. But we need to tighten up those grants, because we can't require something from them if we don't write it and
Right.
let them know it. So,
And then have Ms. Farber look at it, Ms. Mel look at it, you can look at it, make sure it looks right.
Oh, yeah, now, I would imagine that he would talk with them beforehand
I do,
and guide them on.
but some of them just, submit it and they feel like that's a wrap, because they don't read, if,
And look,
they'll initial, but they don't actually read the document, so.
and honestly, I think your job would include, if they don't submit a complete application, you don't submit it to the board.
Right.
And I mean, they need to know, look, these are our rules. And until you abide by them, I'm not going to submit it to the board. And then when it's submitted, that we just have where they show up and we talk to them.
The other reason why, I forgot to mention that the grant, policies were put in place, because a lot of people were approaching board members when they wanted something right away, and they, they would come and say, we would tell them no, it was too late. So they would approach somebody on the board saying, I want this done, and then a board member would pressure us to bring it before, and it just got out of hand, so that was the other.
Yeah, I mean, that needs to stop. I mean, there needs to be a process. I mean, I understand there can be a legitimate emergency every once in a while, but that ought to be rare exception. So, all right, any more discussion about that? All right, well, listen. We have next committee, Operation and Human Resource Committee.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Katz?
Here.
Mr. Morgan?
Yeah.
Mr. Callis?
Here.
Madam Chair, you have a forum.
The only thing on the agenda is to hear public comments today. Are there any public comments? This meeting is adjourned.
All right, thank you. All right, we'll call to order the Board of Commissioners meeting for the Greater Alexandria Economic Development Authority. Tuesday, July 16, 2024. Roll call, please.
Ms. Duncan?
Here.
Dr. Lewis? Ms. Katz?
Here.
Mr. Carroll?
Here.
Mr. Patel? Mr. Morgan?
Yeah.
Mr. Callis?
Here.
Mr. Chair, you have a forum.
Invocation. Do we have anybody who would agree? Sure, thank you.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for living in a country we have the freedom to get together to help our community. Lord, give us guidance, give us wisdom as we try to help those in our community. Help our community to grow. These things we ask in Christ. Amen.
Pledge. Out the window. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we got our roll call ready, so let's go to the active items. A motion to approve the July 2024 consent agenda, which would be a motion to approve the June 18, 2024 meeting minutes, and a motion to approve the June 2024 financial statements. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion from the commissioners? There being none, any public comments? No public comments? All right, we'll take a vote. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Second item is the motion to approve the May 2024 financial statements. We'll have a motion. Second?
Second.
Any comments from the commissioners? There being no comments, any public comments? No public comments, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Third item, motion to approve the April 2024 financial statements. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
Motion and second. Any comments from the commissioners? No commissioner comments? Any comments from the public? No public comments? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. I motion to approve the minutes of the June 12, 2024 special call meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Commission comments? Commission comments? Public comments? There being none? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Fifth item, the motion to approve a cooperative endeavor agreement with the Alexandria and Convention Center Visitors Bureau in the amount of $15,000 for meal and advertising and marketing and $5,000 for fireworks at the 2024 Future Farmers of America Conference.
Mr. Carroll, you were correct at the last meeting. It was not 15,000, it was 20,000, the 5,000 for the fireworks. So I'm just putting it back on here for,
Okay, I was wondering about that.
Clarification.
we did, but we only approved 15,000.
Okay.
I saw one thing in one place.
Right, absolutely. You were correct.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
So moved. Okay.
Second. Okay. All right, any comments or questions from commissioners?
Kids are gonna eat good,
Well, they did good.
They already did.
Oh, they already did. Okay.
and they're not gonna be, they're gonna fall asleep during the fireworks show.
All right, public comments?
I would like to say something. I apologize for any confusion in the memorandum I sent. This was done prior to my being at the CBB. But I do want to tell y'all that, the students, 1,530 students were in downtown Alexandria. That's not their parents, that's not their families. That was 1,530 students. So thank y'all. And this is what happens when we partner. So it's great stuff.
Yeah, thank you. That's wonderful. Wonderful. Okay. Did I take the vote? No, I did. Any further comments or questions? There being none, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. All right, motion to approve a grant request with Peak Fighting Championship in amount not to exceed $10,000 for advertising and marketing of the PFC 41 event to be held November 16th, 2024 in Alexandria, Louisiana. Do I have a motion?
I make the motion.
Second.
I'll second.
Thank you. Comments or questions by the commissioners? There being none, public comments? There being none, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. And then the last item is to hear a discussion regarding GAEDA's legislative authority, and I think we'll turn that over to legal.
Assume that's referencing the issue that we used
Yeah,
to address with respect to the provision and.
In the statute.
I've discussed this with some of y'all. We'll have to go into session to get into more detail. But one of the things that I have been looking at, as you're aware, relates to what we would call a sunset clause provision that is in the legislative authority that created GAEDA. So that is one of the things that we have been looking at, as well as the manner in which to address that issue. So I would obviously like to go in executive session because it does relate to some legal advice issues. The other thing, I'm probably skipping ahead of here, but the other thing that I'd like to go in executive session about has to do with a demand that was made with respect to a copier lease. And so because that discusses potential litigation, I would need to go in executive session to discuss that specific thing as well.
Well, let's finish up with the agenda items. They got any executive director comments? No comments? Commissioner comments? No comments? Legal counsel comments? We'll get those in executive session if we,
Yeah, other than just, there's two things that I want to make y'all aware and the public aware that
Yeah.
I'm looking at and addressing. I guess the other thing to, is obviously I'll play whatever role necessary to get a streamlined process to the agreements with GAEDA versus the public. I agree, there needs to be some clarity over what people are asking for. Multiple categories can always get confusing, but to that extent, it's less confusing if we make the public clear what they're requesting and what that requires. But of course, I'll work with the commissioners to get some standard, not only the rules, but the agreement that we will ultimately sign. I think it's always beneficial for a person requesting funds to understand exactly what they're going to ultimately have to agree to. What we don't want to run into is they request funds and then we put some agreement before them and they're like, okay, well, I didn't understand all that. But this is a public entity and those documents can be on the website. So that would be my recommendation to work towards that. They understand what those agreements are.
What's your feeling about the enforcement of those agreements? I just like 2 minutes of your thoughts about that. Somebody gets money, they spend it, we don't get paperwork back. Angie doesn't get paperwork back. Right? Sizable amount of money. Our job here is to make sure that the taxpayers, that money's going. What's your view on that?
Absolutely, and we'll look at that. I mean, I've never looked at that specific. I don't know that issue's ever been presented in.
But we pay invoices, we don't actually
Yeah.
give the money to the, like,
Yeah.
Biden, for an example, we don't just hand them a check, they have to provide us invoices for services.
And I think that was part of that reasoning
Right.
was,
Right.
right, Ms. Angie? I think that's part of that reasoning was just what you're saying, John, which is I have no way to ensure you're doing with this what I said. I always like to remind everybody on the commission about your obligations and duties with respect to the public fisc. And that absolutely is a way to achieve that, which is you got to give proof of that expenditure and then that be paid at that point.
Right.
But with respect, I mean, I'm just being candid, I've never in 22 years had a situation where I had to look at nonprofit gave money and it wasn't, so I don't know the answer for sure, what your recourse would be. Of course, you have a contractual recourse, no doubt about it. The question always becomes, what's the likelihood of success on that? I think that's your real question.
Yeah, no, it's something I talked to Ms. Bernardo about, like it's a question. I mean, you don't want suing everybody because they're not sending back the right forms. Where did the money go? Just talking about money.
Yeah, but I think paying the invoices alleviates a lot of that.
It sure does, but what happens if they don't submit it's just, we have a question about even the invoice, where do we go for the money?
Well, we certainly could vet any issues with an invoice. I guess using an example, again, just making this up, if it looks like an invoice they created on their laptop and sent over. Certainly I think you have an obligation to vet that. I mean, if you get an invoice from Southern Creations, it's probably worth Ms. Barnado calling Southern Creations and confirming that's their invoice. I mean, there's ways to verify that. And of course, I'd recommend the commission and the director do that.
Well, we actually are doing that, and,
We
John
also
makes us get W-9.
W-9
Everybody.
for everybody.
Yeah,
So it
so,
looks like there's checks and balances in place, it looks like there are. I mean, and again, we're not paying any funds that they're not giving proof of. So you should be. Now, look, if we do it and they don't present an invoice and they don't present an invoice, they don't present the data or do anything like that, then they're not guaranteeing the money. The money goes back into the till, I would say.
Yeah, the invoice is it just doesn't get paid.
Yeah, it's-
There's no legitimate invoice, or we don't have
That's part of
documentation.
it. My mind is probably thinking of a different avenue, but.
maybe think about it. I mean, the question is, what happens if somebody promises 500 people are gonna come? And 20 people come?
Yeah, I think that's an
And that's-
estimate.
yeah.
that you have a lot of legs to
I'd
stand
like
on
to
and say, look,
get about where, you suggested they come back and explain.
Well, they do, and what I think we need to put in the cooperative endeavor, and it may be there, that if they give us projections that turn out to be totally wrong, don't come back again.
That's where we're at.
Yeah, that's what we.
The final report.
Yeah, I mean,
They
no,
have to
but-
fill out, if they don't fill it out, then you can't come back. And, you know, and a lot of them don't. But, some people will try, but, yeah, you can't come back.
I think that's why that form is so important that you sit around, you know, it's got the thresholds. I think people, it's going to give us less heartburn for first timers to come in and say, hey, here's where your number is. Second time you come in, here's where your number is. And I don't know. I feel like probably 75% of the questions I get when people come to me and go, hey, how much money are they getting again? Like, what's going on over there? And I'm like, well, that's what the board approved. And people, somebody here at the hotel will say, you know, maybe 25 people showed up. You know? So if you had that first time threshold for like the beauticians or for someplace, somebody came in, that kind of ends all that. I'm just talking out loud, just.
Well, no, I mean, we do need to end that. I mean,
Well, we would know not to review with them the next year because their numbers were not.
Just
They
money
were not,
lost.
So we would know next year.
right.
And the confusion behind all of it, you know, all of that plays a role in it. Because when we're constantly talking to the hotel, Martha, it doesn't seem like, I don't know who's at the Holiday Inn now.
There is one
Heard
thing
that-
though that we could help with, like you were discussing, maybe attaching what we agreed to do for them to the invoices that are pertaining to that organization, so that we could look back and whoever's approving the bills and say, oh yes, we did say that we would approve this, so here's the check for that. That would be the only other, one more step that you could add to it, if that makes sense. Attach a copy of what this board agreed to do for that organization to those invoices. So that if somebody maybe wasn't at the meeting where it was approved, but they are the person that approves those checks or invoices, they could look back and say, this was our agreement with these people, this is how much money we said, and here are the invoices, and they do match up, it's okay to pay these bills. Because a lot of times, we're paying the bills, I don't know, 90, 120 days after the event, and we might have approved it 90 days before, you're talking 6 months. It may not be fresh in the mind of the person approving, how much did we agree to pay these people? But here it is in black and white, this is what the board approved.
Well,
This is what
also
we
in
should
our
pay.
agreement, it says that they have to have invoices in about 15 days.
Right, but it still could be a quick check,
Check and balance.
check and balance to say, just say, I missed a meeting and that's where it was approved, what we were gonna pay these. Yeah, I can go back and look, but by the time you ask me to look at the checks, do I really know what we agreed to pay these people? Well, here it is in black and white. Here's the invoices, it all matches up, it's good to go. And that would be just a simple check, actually, because you're just printing out what we agreed to do for that organization.
Let's put it in the form.
Yeah, John, maybe you and Angie could work out with the legal counsel, and anybody else who wants input, please.
I think.
Provide your input and join.
Let's, Miss Angie will get, I'll help her, we'll get a draft, just send it to
Everybody, okay.
everybody.
I also do Excel sheets on all of them without, that list all their invoices, all reimbursements.
Maybe just print that out and attach it to the checks or what are the invoices so that it's real simple when somebody runs up there to go ahead and sign something. You don't have to look it up. I don't have to go back through papers. It's right there. This is what we agreed we would pay for this organization. Here's the checks and the invoices. It's all good. It just makes it so streamlined and simple.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, I think we're gonna try to vote to go into executive session, so if y'all wanna make any comments now, please do, or if you can make it after the executive session. Yeah, sure.
Mr. Chairman, if you would, I would believe that the discussion of David's legislative authority is a matter that can be spoken outside of executive session. I recognize that if there are litigations that might be attached to the discussions, go into executive session, but as a member of the public, I want to hear your discussion on the legislative authority of David, please.
Here's what you want me to respond?
Yeah.
One of the issues that have been raised, that I've raised with them is concerns over the legislative authority that created this bill. In that legislative authority, in that statute, it says, and it's subsection J, says, the district shall dissolve and cease to exist 1 year after all bonds, notes, and other evidences of indebtedness of the district, including refunding bonds, are paid in full as to both principal and interest. However, in no event shall the district have an existence of less than 3 years. Clearly, we're past the 3 years. So the question that needs to be considered and that we're researching has to do with what I'm calling this a sunset clause. True sunset clauses will say that tax ends on January 31st, 2024.
Correct.
And somebody will come put it back on a ballot or go get legislative authority to extend that tax. This is a sunset in the sense that it's still a sunset type provision, right? It has a triggering point and you have to determine whether or not you've reached the triggering point.
So was the trigger point 3 years after the creation of the organization?
No, Your Honor. No, Your Honor. That's right. You can stay in court, you know, it's a question, sir.
You just have to sit right.
There you go. No, what it provides, again, it's saying that the commission shall last no less than 3 years. That's the minimum. So, meaning this is not effective, the sunset clause would not go in effect in the initial 3-year period. So it gives you a minimum of a 3-year existence.
From the creation.
From the creation, we've passed that.
Yes.
Right, so we're done with that. So the question,
17 years past that.
so right, so that's fine. That's a way to say, even if you had no debts the first 3 years, nobody can dissolve it. You're gonna exist for at least 3 years.
Correct.
But what it talks about is dissolution and the ceasing to exist 1 year after it has no indebtedness. And it talks about specifically all bonds, notes, and other evidence of indebtedness of the district are paid in full as to both principal and interest.
Right.
That is what I would call the sunset provision that is triggered when you do not have that indebtedness. So that is what I am currently looking at and going to talk to them about with respect to 2 things. One, my interpretation of that based on the research I have done. And the second thing would be how do you address that and really tee it up? That's really the question, right? I mean, how do you get an answer to this? As legal counsel to them, I'll be very candid. I mean, this needs to be looked at and addressed. This is a legislatively created entity that is allowed to tax collect tax and issue a tax without it being on the ballot. That is an extraordinary ability, right? Because there was no ballot to pass this hotel tax. It's pursuant to this legislative authority. So that heightens for me personally the level of needing to look to see whether or not this can continue and should continue.
Well, if there was no ballot to create tax, there was no ballot to create GAEDA. GAEDA was created by the legislature.
Correct.
Okay? And as I read it, is that it says once bonds and indebtedness are paid off, if this organization never passed the bond, they never had the debt.
Well, it is my, and I don't know, it's my understanding that GAEDA went to the bond commission years ago and incurred bond commission approved debt about the hotel across from the, zoo.
That is correct.
And everything. Okay. And just to follow up on what Barbara's saying, my first meeting here, Kurt Ostricker stood up there and gave us audited financial statements. He actually went to footnote 9 and it said, as of December 31, 2023, the authority has no outstanding debt attributable to the authority.
Correct.
And that's where Barbara's sort of going is my concern too, because that raised flags in my mind is we just need to find out what's the interpretation of the law. I'm not advocating GAEDA dissolve, but we need to know how the law was interpreted, so we can know whether GAEDA legally can continue to exist.
And I will tell you, again, I'm telling this in executive session, and I can explore more, but I will tell you, this provision or something, sometimes it's identical to this, and sometimes it's very, very similar to this, is in multiple economic districts that have been created all over Louisiana. So this language is not unique to this particular authority. And what I will tell you, in most instances where that language was employed by the legislature, it actually has right before it a title that says term. It is a term provision. And so as a term provision, you have to determine whether or not the term has ended. That's what a term provision is. So if you look at a lot, I mean, I printed, I mean, again, I mean, and I don't, again, I can say it here, I was gonna talk to them about, it. I mean, there's just legislative created entities and, and economic development programs and economic development authorities over and over and over that have this language, and they all reference this as a term. So the bond, whether you issue a bond, whether you didn't issue a bond, I'm not sure that matters.
So the legislative intent, apparently this comes from the legislature. What is the legislative intent? Do all of these other organizations, have they rolled up and gone away? Or do they continue to exist and function? You know,
What?
if our debt's paid off and the debt is the issue, then we'll do something.
When was that bond paid off? Yeah,
2010.
Yeah.
so 14 years.
It's long ago been paid off, yes.
So 14 years ago? So, you know, we wake up today and said, oh my goodness, we should have rolled up 14 years ago. Well, right. But we continue to function and serve.
It doesn't matter when you wake up and decide, sir, you have to, this decision has to be, they are operating under legislative authority that may be in question. So the fact that somebody wants to question whether this was brought up 10 years ago or now, I am new counsel to the board, and I'm telling you, I think this needs to be decided. A court is who will ultimately, in my opinion, is gonna have to determine whether or not they're still within their legislative authority. With respect to every other economic district out there, I obviously don't know their financial standings. I don't have any idea whether or not they have indebtedness, or whether or not they continue to roll, or whether or not there's been a determination. What I have not been able to locate is where this determination has been made with respect to any other economic development. That's really, I understand that maybe 14 years ago, this should have been brought up, and 10 years ago. I don't have an answer there, other than you were issuing a tax against individuals in the greater city, that stay in the greater city of Alexandria, respect to hotels, and the issue of whether or not this sunset provision has been triggered, in my opinion, needs to be answered. And that's my opinion. They will ultimately have to decide whether or not there's an action instituted for the purposes of getting that answer. And that's, you know,
Do better on that. This is in the statute. And actually, the legislator said the city of Alexandria can't create GAEDA. The legislator didn't create GAEDA. It gave the city permission to create it. And the statute passed, by the state legislator and signed by the governor has that sunset provision. So what we're gonna say is, we just need a court to tell us what it means. That's it.
Well, as opposed to litigating everything or asking a question from the court, I appreciate your respect, it is, if the legislature created this, and this is the intention of our community and this organization to continue to move forward, this kind of question, do you still beat your wife? There's no right answer. We've been operating we missed 2 sunset provisions here, but we're still in business. So if we still want to be in business, go ask the legislature to clean it up.
Well, that's one of the points. That's my point. The legislature, they can't clean it up.
And all we have to do is go to our representatives and ask them to clean this up. Because we have a lot
That
of
is correct.
organizations.
Yeah, I mean, the legislator can't clean
And I think
it
a
up.
lot cheaper than going to court. Litigation is not always the way.
Hey, look, it's not an adversarial litigation. It's a procedural bad law where we just say, court, tell us what this means, but just tell us what it means. I mean, we're not adversarial.
you absolutely can go to the legislature.
Yeah.
I mean, that's already been discussed.
That's how it got created. Why don't we go to get it fixed there? If it's broken, go get it fixed the same person that created it.
You absolutely can. I mean, that's your option. I don't disagree, and that has been told to the commissioners that that's an option. So, I mean, that's the question. You're gonna have to go to the legislature to get that addressed. Or you're gonna have to get an opinion from the court on a deck action as to what that provision means. But at the end of the day, the provision's there. It's absolutely there. And it concerns me that it has that sunset provision. And if you continue to operate like that sunset provision isn't there, that there are multiple people that have standing to challenge this if they so chose to. And you're gonna be in litigation because they're gonna challenge it. And because that tax is being collected every day. So that's it. It's just an answer. It's not an advocating one way or the other. It's just the answer. These commissioners are serving on this commission pursuant to the legislation and the ordinance. At the end of the day, are we operating within the confines and with the authority that was ultimately given by the legislature? But I would disagree. You can get the legislature. Session just ended. You're not going to get special session on this, obviously. I don't think anybody thinks you would, but you're either going to have to address it legislatively or you're going to have to get a court opinion. But at some point, this needs to be answered. You can't, in my opinion, you can't keep rocking along like it's not there.
You know, another 14 years and not answer the question. You should
Well, I
have the
think-
question answered, but
Also, this did come up, 2 years ago, I think, Mr. Carroll, when we were still over at city council, right before COVID. And the, past legal counsel, and I think I said that to you, wrote a, opinion that that didn't apply. You had to take it all. It was a long, maybe you can understand it, but it was a long legal answer that said we still could operate. That didn't mean it was taken out of context or something like that, so the board pushed on. That was only 3 years ago, I believe, when she did that opinion letter. So it has been addressed. It has been a matter of concern. So, but again, we went based on what legal counsel told us at the time.
I think the standing at that point was we had multiple lease contracts, and that's what they
Right.
used as,
Yeah.
considered that as debt.
All right, for,
Executive session then?
yeah, any further comments? Okay. All right, well, let's, there's, item J is to go into executive session to discuss, some threatened litigation, and this is simply over here for me. And it's really not that big of a deal, but, since we've been threatened to be sued, we need to go into executive session. So we'll need a vote to move into executive session. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Okay, we'll move into executive session. So that means the cameras need to go off, and thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank y'all.